In this course, we're going to start talking about rigging. Rigging is a structure that allows you to create a system from independent objects, and then allows you to use that system to move those objects. We're going to go a step further and actually skin our rigs, and all this terminology comes from industry, and then use the rig to animate or move the characters you guys created in previous courses, in 2405 to be exact. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Let's talk about how you can rig a structure without bones. What I've set up here is I've got a platform, a cylinder, a sphere, a rectangular column, another sphere, another column, a disc, and then a couple of pinchers. Let's see right here. They're right there. Okay. Now, I've set each one of these up and put it in the order that I want to use to create this crane, robotic arm, a whole bunch of different terminology you can use for this. This is a pretty standard setup that is used a lot when people are learning how to control all this. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is that every object you create, all of these with the exception of the pinchers, are just standard primitives. And then the pinchers, I drew an outline, closed it, closed spline, extruded, and they all have pivot points, right? And we've worked a little bit with pivot points. You know, if you come over here to Hierarchy, hit Effect Pivot Only, you can then move the pivot point. And that's what you're going to want to do in this case in order to set up your system. So I've got a diagram that I've created, I've drawn by hand, that I will post for you guys in Blackboard so you can see what I'm talking about. It's called crane joint articulation. So, because one of the things that we have to talk about are how do these joints function? How do they interact? If I want this arm to articulate, to move, I have to determine, first of all, how do I link the parts and pieces together to create the motion that I want? And then secondly, when I move those parts and pieces, where does the pivot point need to be? Because remember, the pivot point is the point about which it rotates, or the point about which it moves, or the point about which it scales. And so we have to determine that in advance. And so one of the things you want to do is go ahead and create a diagram that lets you know how to set up your parts, where you want your pivots, how they're going to articulate, and then how are you going to link them together. Because one of the things we've done in the past is we've just linked groups of things together that just stayed together permanently. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to link these guys together permanently because we don't ever want them not to be linked. And there's a separate video for working with temporary links that follows this video. But in this one, what we're going to talk about is, let's just zoom in here, over here. And I've got these two claws on my crane. And you see that's where the pivot point is. But that's not where I want it to be. Because what I want to be able to do is to rotate to open these so that they can pick up objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Hierarchy tab, Effect Pivot Only, and then I'm going to relocate that pivot in accordance with my diagram that I created to where I want this to rotate, the point about which I want this to rotate. And that's pretty good. And remember, you got to turn this off. And now when I rotate this object, it rotates there instead of, whoops, there. Okay, that was the default pivot, which I'm now going to move. Whoops. Okay. To down here, so that when this rotates, it's going to rotate about the bottom. Okay. So then the next thing I want to think about is my my disc here. The pinchers are the claws are on this. Now, how is this going to move? Where am I going to want to locate my pivot? And for this, it's actually going to rotate. So the default pivot is in the center. As this rotates, like this, that is the appropriate pivot point for that. Okay. So then, where do I want my pivot point for my arm? For this arm, I want to move that to the center of the sphere. And that's because I want that to rotate about the center of the sphere. Okay. And you guys can see this all on the document in Blackboard. Okay, that pivot is fine. I'm going to move this one down to here. This rotates, so that's fine. This pivot is fine. And this pivot is fine. Okay, so they're all good. Now, the next thing I'm going to need to do so that this works together as a system is link everything together. Okay, so I have my pivots where I want them to be so that when I move my parts and pieces, they're going to move fluidly. The next thing I'm going to do is select and link to on my ribbon, go up to my select and link tool. And I'm going to select my first claw, and it changes that. And I could click again. Whoops. There you go. You got the rubber band, and then click on the disc. So this is now linked to the disc. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Link to the disc. And then the disc is going to be, whoops, I click off of it, click on. It's still in that mode. There we go. Is going to be linked to the arm. And I'm going to show you how you can remember this as soon as I get done linking these guys. Okay, and I'm just going down in order, and I'm just linking these in the order in which I created them, or stacked them, from top to the bottom. Okay, linking this to this. Okay, and then this. Linking that to this. Okay, and then that to the base. Okay, so here's what happens. It's not any different than your body. This is my body, and when it moves, it takes, whoops, I didn't link that one. It left a finger behind. That got kind of ugly. But it takes the arm with it, okay? Let me re-link that, go in, and it's always good to check them out, test them, because you can always hit the undo button to make sure everything's linked the way you want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to select this again. I'm going to link it to the base. Apparently didn't do it right last time. Okay, now, little test drive. Okay. Okay, something's up with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the button to the right that says unlink selection. And it's going to remove it, all of its links. Okay, it should not be linked. And then I'm going to try it again. Link. Okay. And it hates my guts. Okay. Let's see if I can find out what's going on over here. So I'm going to go on my hierarchy tab. I'm going to go to my IK. See if I see anything over here. Start, end. Bind. I don't see any binding. It's interesting. Bind, I don't want to bind position. Alright, well, it has no link. So I'm not sure why it's not working, other than that sometimes 3D Studio Max likes to do that. What I can do at this point is delete this, clone this one over here, and using the mirror tool, create another one, and end up with 2 pinchers. And so that I have those all connected. Okay, and I'm going to stop this video here and we'll continue in the next.